Hello and welcome to Brain Trust Live number 513.
This week on the podcast, crowd math is not math, it's a vibe.
And there's no such thing as pointless activism.
Plus, maybe Democrats never do the worst version of the thing, but why are they so complicit in the thing?
And can Democrats not put us in the position of having to agree with Tucker Carlson?
Plus, are you in NYC? Vote for Mamdani. Elect fun people with ideas.
And speaking of ideas, you can have them too.
We'll have all this and more.
This is Brain Trust Live. Hey y'all, I'm Brent.
I'm Lila, and you can find us on the web at www.braintrustlive.com.
We're back again.
Just on a random Tuesday night, here to tell you our thoughts on the last 4 months.
Yeah, no, it was April. It was the Easter episode.
Oh yeah, we did the Easter episode last. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're working at a steady 1 to 2 months gap
Yeah.
between episodes.
It's whenever we decide that we need to have multiple rants.
That's right.
And need someplace to put them.
Exactly. Well, because what we have started doing on this podcast, if you have not been listening recently, is instead
No
of
one has been.
which no one has been because
There's been no way
there's
to
been no
listen
way
recently.
to is instead of focusing on the minutia of electoral politics, which is what our normal bread and butter is.
Right.
We are focusing
Boring.
and depressing.
I know, right?
We're focusing more on like what the left is and isn't doing, what they could be doing, how we want to kind of how we want to think about the strategy on the left. And we're just not worrying so much about the sort of big ticket horrible news items that you hear about every day,
Right.
because
We're going to talk about some of them.
we're going to talk about some of them, obviously,
Yeah.
but we're going to talk about how the left is and is not reacting to them.
Right, exactly. We're not here to give you the facts about them. We're only here to give you the feelings about
That's
them.
right. That's right. And to help you figure out what your feelings are about them, because I would
Yeah.
contend a lot of people are having confused feelings right now about
We'll
how
clear
to-
those right up.
exactly about how to think about what's going on right now, what their role in is, and
Yeah.
what the sort of like next steps are.
Yes.
The first thing that I want to talk about, though, might seem insignificant
Most
to you.
importantly.
Except for that I've been harassing Brent. I've been
whatever.
harassing Brent about this via text for days now. Because, okay, so you may have gone to your local No Kings March. You may not have. Nobody knows what you were up to. You're a mystery to us. Whether or not you did, you've probably gotten a bunch of text messages from political campaigns of various sorts, maybe emails, maybe you've read in the news, whatever, with crowd estimate sizes for that march.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't, I'm sure, what you thought I was going to focus on about the No Kings March, but before we get into the nitty-gritty of what happened there and what it was for and who it was for and what it accomplished, I need to talk to you about crowd math and how fake crowd math is. Because for years now, after every march that I've been to, I've gotten a bunch of appeals from, mostly fundraisers, but
Yeah.
also organizations that are looking to kind of
Sure. Maybe the organization that you registered with to go to the No Kings March.
Right.
Did you see that you could register
I
on
know.
their
I was
website?
like, why would you register
don't
to go
do
to a
that.
protest? Don't be doing
Just-
that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. Just show up if you want to show up. But I've been getting a lot of contact for years in the aftermath of these marches being like, 600,000 people marched on blah, blah, blah day for blah, blah, blah incident. And then you'll get another email that's like, in Charlottesville, Virginia, I shouldn't have used Charlottesville as an example.
No.
As soon as I said that, I got my mind wandered. No, but like in Grand Rapids, Michigan,
Yeah.
10,000 people took to the streets about what.
Nobody
any
in Grand
case.
Rapids knows how many people were there.
I'm here to assure you that all of those numbers are fake. Because the way that they officially estimate crowd size is literally by looking at photos of the crowd and guessing.
Yeah.
That's crowd math for you.
Yeah, they get out their magnifying glass.
Right.
And look at pictures, and they're like, well,
Seems like if this many people were in this sector and it filled this many sectors, whatever. All crowd estimates are fake.
Yeah.
It is like economics. It is not a science. It is a fake science. It's a pseudoscience estimating crowd sizes, which is why you'll sometimes see that like NYPD estimates that 100,000 people showed up at an anti-cop march or whatever, like a Black Lives Matter protest, and then you'll be like, I don't know, it seems like
there were 2 million.
There were 2 million people there. You know, like, so you'll often hear crowd estimates that are ludicrously low for giant marches that you couldn't see the beginning or end of.
Yeah.
Crowd size estimates are all based on feelings and vibes.
Yeah.
And you are allowed to have feelings and vibes yourself. A crowd estimate is a very personal number. It's not an outward-facing number. It's a number that you feel in your heart.
Well, I did that on Saturday because somebody that we were with were like, "Do you think there's like thousands of people here?"
Absolutely.
Like, I think they were debating whether they
Hundreds
were
of
thousands or
thousands.
hundreds because
Right.
we were at the small
We were at a
one.
small
we were at
march.
the West
Yeah.
Hollywood, and I was like, "Oh, for sure."
Right. No.
Very confidently knew that there were at least multiple thousands of people there, based on just like
Vibes.
I don't know, looked
Vibes
around
and-
a little bit.
Vibes and feelings.
Yeah.
It felt like a march that had thousands of people at it, therefore
Most
it did.
certainly.
And so the Alt National Park Service Twitter account did us a real favor here because they decided to estimate that 12.5 million people attended No Kings marches. Now, is that
I like
number
it.
low, high? Nobody knows.
No.
We made this number up.
Right.
But the organizers themselves and every organization that has since tried to profit off of this occurrence
Right.
have been sending me emails telling me that only 4 to 5 million people attended.
Like, what?
The 12.5 figure is out there. Fucking run with it.
Roll with it.
If somebody came out tomorrow and said that 50 million people were at that march, nobody knows how many people that is.
Then that's how many people were there.
Then someone else said it. It's not even you who said it.
Right.
Be the person who gives someone else the impetus for saying 50 million people were at the march. Think of yourselves as personal messengers for whatever march you attended. If someone is like, how many people were there, come up with the
All of them?
biggest number that you can possibly think
Everybody I know.
could be feasibly part of it.
Yeah.
If you need to include every person that honked on the way past your march, include
sure.
them. That's like, you know, our friend of the podcast, Sasha, was talking about a march that she'd heard about that had only one person somewhere in South Carolina. And I was like, do you mean 10 people? And she was like, well, the one guy would know if there were other people there. And I was like, you can't prove people weren't somewhere.
Right.
So you can't prove that 10 people weren't protesting that
Those
day.
other 9
and-
could have not known that the others were there.
Exactly. We don't know where they were. We don't know how big a town it was. They might have all not seen each other. They might have just protested in their hearts. It's hard to know what you're talking about when you use a crowd estimate. But
It just
it doesn't matter because the point is that organizers on the left routinely do this thing where they vastly underestimate a believable number for their crowd
Yes.
size, and there is no right number.
Right. And it's because they're so, like, stupidly, in this instance, committed to the truth, where there isn't one. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
what, and the reason that they're so deeply committed to this truth is because Donald Trump lies about his crowd sizes. And so, like, they are trying to be, like, deeply serious.
Right.
About this, and it's just like
There's
that's
actually
what,
not
that's
a
what
right answer.
That's what annoys me about it, because it's like, you're right, like anybody could just make it up, and like, why aren't we making it up bigger? But like, I do think that's the underlying reason, and
for
it's
sure.
so fucking dumb.
A crowd size estimate is a messaging tool. Nobody
Yeah.
actually thinks that the number of people in a crowd size estimate are actually on the street at any given moment at any protest. There are always vastly more or vastly fewer than whatever organizers suggest.
Right.
But whatever number you're saying always sounds comically small. Inflate it.
Yeah.
Inflate
Yes.
it in part because if someone is asked to refute your number, like, first of all, you can make up fake math and no one will follow it. So it won't matter. Like, if someone is like, well, how did you get to that number? You can be like, well, we took the square root of 7 and we divided it by 14 and then we multiplied it by 27, as you do in a crowd math situation. And people, what are people going to say? No, that's not how you estimate the size of a crowd. Nobody knows how to estimate the size of a crowd. But the other thing is, if they call upon somebody to refute it, the reason that you're wrong is going to involve so much silly nonsense math that no one understands that no one is going to listen.
No, right.
It is impossible to refute a lie about crowd size. That is why Donald Trump keeps doing it.
Yeah, right.
So you have the actual pictures. The pictures of that march look like millions of people were there.
Totally.
So don't worry about how many millions were actually on the street. Worry about how many millions sound like a lot of people.
Right. How many millions were in your heart?
Exactly.
Not on the street.
How many millions of people in their hearts believed that they should have been on the street?
Yeah.
Put them in your crowd estimate. It doesn't fucking matter. The point is, think of crowd estimates not as a tool, not as a vehicle for truth, because this is an instance in which there is no truth.
Yeah.
I know you want to believe, because we're talking about physical bodies standing on streets, that there is a truth
Right.
here, but there is actually not, because it's like
Well,
how,
it's a science. We have to protect science,
right.
Lila.
This is economics. It's like a fake science, you know? Get out of your heads that you're dealing with, because of numbers, it sounds like it's got to be legit. there are plenty of uses of numbers that are wildly fake.
Right.
Embrace that that's the world we live in now. Embrace that the number that you say is for people to talk about on television and has no relationship to, because if you say that 50 million people were there, the people that were there will still feel that a lot of people were there.
Yeah.
And the people that weren't there will feel like they missed a party. And that's the whole point of holding a protest like that.
Right.
So,
although maybe, is it the whole reason of holding a protest?
Well, and that brings us to our next point and my next rant. I promise Brent has rants later in this podcast, but...
Yeah, Lila's are just top heavy, and that's fine.
Yeah, sometimes I gotta get stuff off my chest early before I forget what it is. There's been a lot of discourse on the left about the pointlessness of marches like the No Kings March.
Yep.
And I get it. You get a lot of
Same.
people who aren't super political showing up and feeling good about themselves. I saw way too much Kamala Harris merch at that march.
Kamala Harris merch. We saw an unironic version of the "If Kamala had won, we'd all be at brunch" sign, which I thought anybody who had ever even so much as considered politics, like once in their entire being, knew that has become a dumb sign and was sort of like a
not
calling
people
card
at the
for
West
like,
Hollywood No Kings March.
No, not there.
They would never. We heard a number of the most useless Democrats at every level give speeches about how we should fight the Trump administration without any indication that they had any tools to do so. We saw an unironic "Don't Tread on Me" flag at that protest.
Yeah, right. I forgot
the
about
man
that.
very appropriately tripped in a dramatic fashion over his own dog.
Right.
And had to scramble to get up in a way that was so deeply funny that I can't even really express.
And all of the silly rules from No Kings themselves, sort of like
course.
sit down if there's violence,
Right, don't
and also this
sit
is not
down if there's violence at a
and
protest.
like
That's
various
dumb.
stupid things, and
Yes.
like all of the news that like they were like, of course, working with like local police forces to like.
They wanted your grandmother to come to that march. Like, sorry about it. I get why these are all frustrating signs that establishment Democrats are not serious people.
Yes.
And we are about to do possibly an entire podcast about how they're not. So you will get no argument from us. Yeah. I also think that maybe the left misses the forest for the trees a lot when it comes to actions like this, though, because these are not meant to be specific actions with specific asks that accomplish anything. They are gateway drugs. Yep. They are a way for you to dip your toe into politics, to find out that it's friendly and kind of fun, to find out that a lot of people in your community feel concerned about what's going on.
I think that's probably the most important thing about it, actually.
To feel like you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
And the idea that that's not incredibly important during a slide into fascism is stupid.
Yeah.
And, like, of course, this is not meant to accomplish the same thing as, like, you know, we have these very kind of like targeted ICE protests going on in LA.
Yeah.
They have been really effective and they are doing really important work at those protests. Yeah. And the No Kings March is not those.
Right.
It is not meant to stop like an innocent person from being abducted off the street by masked goons with guns. Yeah. That is not what a No Kings March does. It is not intending to do that. It is, because of that, not prioritizing that in its rhetoric.
Right.
And also you should know that there are people that are probably not going to show up to stop a masked gunman from abducting someone in their neighborhood, but will show up at a No Kings March and might learn a little something about why those people are in the streets trying to stop masked gunmen.
Yes.
And that is also good. But then there's also these opportunities that I think people on the left forgot about because they're so busy feeling smarter than everyone else that there was this brilliant move in West Hollywood. The West Hollywood March was silly. It was held in a park so no one could see it. It was obviously filled with silly feel-good liberals, whatever. It was a nice crowd. Everyone was friendly.
Sure.
That's all you're really looking for in a march like that. We took an old friend of Brent's who is both a longtime friend of Brent's and is also an older person to her very first march.
Yes,
and it
81.
was exciting.
She was very excited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like there were a lot of things that were nice about the fact.
Or her American flag gear as per instructions.
Exactly. Was I comfortable with the amount of American flag gear there? No, I wasn't. But I held my tongue. You know. Right. But a brilliant thing happened, which is that an immigration focus group that was also a drag focus group, had set up a microphone on the other side of West Hollywood Park and just peeled off the entire crowd, giving better speeches and doing drag performances, because this was, again, West Hollywood, and a drag performance will get you a long way with a West Hollywood audience.
They were the ones that took off on the march, too, weren't
they?
Which wasn't actually, like,
the No
fully
Kings thing
scheduled?
was not a march. It was just
a rally in the park.
A rally in the park that no one could see, and it was stupid. But because this other group was like, hey, everyone's going to be in the park, we'll go to the park.
Yeah.
And you know, because people were activated, people came to the No Kings March because they wanted to do something, so they were activated. This other group showed up, basically stole the entire crowd from the No Kings March, and then led a ton of unpermitted marches around West Hollywood for the entire rest of the day. I saw groups all over the city. It was not just right at the park. I saw we marched with one group and then walked home, and another group was coming from the other direction from somewhere. I don't know where, but related to this march. And so there was an opportunity in the No Kings March that I think pretending like you're too good to participate in a mass protest like that robs you of.
Well, that's what has been so frustrating to me, because like to your point, like I get all of the reasons why like some of these things like sort of are a little silly and they have no end game, and like what's the point? Like I get it. You know, there's this guy I see on TikTok a lot who I really like, who's an activist, and like he was making a lot of good points about this to the point where at one point I was like, I'm not going to this fucking march.
Right.
And then I was like, take a breath.
Right.
And, you know, it's just like I was saying to you before the podcast, it's like, well, he's like a self-proclaimed anarchist.
Right.
And like, that's great.
Right.
I mean, go you.
Go him.
You know,
great
but
work.
It's like, we're not all.
Right.
You know, so it's
and
like.
And a lot of our neighbors are not.
So like, you know, I appreciate the content on TikTok, but it's like, let the people go to the park with their stupid sign and like stop being so rotten about it.
Well, to give them an opening to participate.
This is why nobody wants to be on the left.
Exactly. No, literally, the most important thing that you should know about activism is how fun it can be and how nice it is to have a community around you. And when people, and you know, people on all sides of the political spectrum do this, because people in the center are fucking humorless drones as well, obviously.
Yes.
But like, when you make it feel exclusive and not welcoming, and like you need to know something special to participate, and if you don't have the special knowledge, you're too dumb to know what to, you know, you're not doing it right, it shuts down like sort of pathways for people to actually learn how to do stuff effectively.
Yeah.
Because a march like that is a great way to recruit people to go and do these ICE protests in larger numbers in other parts of town. It's a great way for the groups that are organizing those protests to find people. It's a great way to take someone to their first march where they're like, wait a minute, I love antagonizing the police. I'll go and, you know, knock on pots and pans outside of a hotel that ICE is staying in all night if I want to. Like, it's a great way to, like, trying to create a pathway for someone to get involved in deeper work. You have to know, A, that a lot of people aren't going to get involved in deeper work, and you got to live with that. Right. And that those people might also be disgruntled and might need a way of, you know, of sharing that. And also that those people might need that moment where everyone is standing in one place to find out what else they can do that's actually helpful. Yeah. And that they're not going to be doing that in a vacuum in their house. So getting them all to the park is a good idea.
Totally.
Whether or not they're doing anything useful in the park.
Right.
And if it takes a bunch of big money orgs and Democrats that we hate to get them all to the park, then that is where they'll be. So find them there.
Right.
Like this march in West Hollywood did.
If you're a great activist and organizer, one of the great places to be an activist and an organizer is a place where literally all the people are.
Exactly. Like, that's what I thought was so brilliant about the West Hollywood sort of, like, bogarting of the march, is I was like, well, they were like, everyone's going to be there. Yeah. People love drag queens, and people are mad at ICE. What do we do about that?
Right? And, like, I don't understand. This seems like a new phenomenon to me, actually, with these protests, too, because even that last protest that we went to downtown, which was the parade, which was similar, it was put on by the same organization, by 5051 or whatever.
This is a silly organization. We know that.
But even at that march, like, you know, all of the social groups were there. The communists were there. Like, and maybe they were at the downtown one too. We weren't at it, but like, I just don't understand why all of a sudden now it was this specific march where it's just sort of like, oh, don't go to that. It's stupid. Well, it's like, no.
This is what happens. Is that because I've seen this in a lot of contexts in the course of my anti-war activism, you know, over the many years, but also in the course of my public health activism as well, where what happens is when things get really tough and people get really scared, they start to kind of like revert, because of their fear, they start to revert into these very kind of like black and white patterns when it comes to their own work. And it's in part because, you know, right now, a lot of the criticism of the No Kings rally was about people wanting to protect their privacy and feeling like people were going to post dumb photos of themselves, with their faces at these marches. And of course, the ICE protests, everyone's being very careful to protect their identities, and they're not bringing phones, and they're wearing face masks and all these.
The ICE agents.
Including the ICE agents themselves. But I mean, like, these are the kind of, like, this is the kind of thinking that people as we fall deeper into fascism and people get more scared, you're going to see more of these fractures inside of movements from people who don't sort of like know how to extend grace to people who aren't being as careful, as clever, as informed as them.
Yep.
And you kind of have to remember to keep your humanity about you in these kinds of times, because these are very dangerous times for activist communities, specifically because this kind of thinking becomes a sort of a way of distinguishing who's safe and who's not safe, and therefore groups become very exclusive in a way that makes it hard to build movements.
Right.
Listen, 50, 51, or whatever who they are, they too many numbers in their names, and I hate saying it.
Yeah.
They are a coalition movement of mostly nonsense people. But it's a coalition. Yeah. So you have to sometimes be in a coalition with idiots. Yeah. Most coalitions include idiots.
Sure.
And coalition work is most important.
It's a giant group project. Remember those?
Exactly. Coalitions are most important in times like this, where the dangers are so big and so far-reaching and so kind of overwhelming that you need like a broad swath of society to say no, and then you can kind of argue amongst yourselves about what you want to say yes to.
Right. Yes.
But you have to be part of the group that says no too. You have to do both. Sorry about it. And it's annoying because nobody likes talking to the people that are taking a dumber stance on an issue that you know front and back.
Right.
Nobody likes dealing with it. I get it. But I think the kind of it reeks of inexperience to not kind of understand the role of coalition building and coalition work in a time like this.
Right.
And that is because activists are often young and and feeling sad and scared right now, and I can understand that.
Sure.
And also though, you don't poo-poo other actions, just take actions that you think are more effective.
Yeah.
That is, the rule is, don't decide that the people who want to move sort of broadly on the bus with you are doing it wrong. Show them how to do it right.
Yes.
And when you want to call them out inside the room. Don't call them out publicly.
Right.
That's, I think, we've talked about that a little bit already on this podcast, the sort of idea that to focus on sort of when we think about, sort of criticizing movement players and movement work, to figure out how to do that in a way that is a productive inside the room conversation, but not to lead with that, because then that becomes then you've just handed criticism to to your opponents that they can just run with. Right. That is something to be mindful of in a moment like this, even if you are deeply annoyed with the people that you have to work with, because so many people are annoying to work with. I hate to tell everyone this, but it's awful out there. Everyone's too literal, and they're too annoying, and they have no sense of humor, and it's terrible, but also
just trying to do their best.
They're trying to do their best, and also everyone would rather have fun.
Yes.
Don't be the person that makes the work so deeply unfun. Be the person, you can be a squeaky wheel. I mean,
right.
My whole family's out here being squeaky wheels on inside conversations and numerous issues. But don't be the person that decides that fun isn't also important and the community is not also important. Right. Anyway, okay. Yeah. Speaking of crowds, before we move on to Brent's rant.
To my rant.
Right. Well, there wasn't one at that sad military parade because everyone was at the No Kings March.
No crowd size there.
Not a crowd size to be had there.
But he'll make one up.
Well, exactly.
Which is our point.
And the thing is, it will fly in the face of every piece of video evidence that you saw of that event, because every piece of video evidence you saw was a dead silent, empty
Well, they don't even care about that. There's been multiple videos of things where, whether it was Alex Padilla, who, Kristi Noem declared came in and tried to attack her or something ridiculous.
Who literally just tried to ask a question in a press conference.
We've seen the video of that also. Yeah. And then I think they released some similar statement too about Brad Lander trying to,
Right,
attack
that's all on video too.
It's no, none of those things happened.
Right.
Well, what? No. We know they didn't.
Exactly. I think sometimes the center left, I won't say the left about this, but the center left gets so obsessed with the truth that they aren't able to effectively message the truth.
Yes, no, that's exactly what it is.
It's they don't want to exaggerate in a news report, and it's well, exaggerations are all that anyone is saying in a news report. That is what your spokesperson says. Yeah. Is the exaggerate. I am doing a lot of research right now for a project on Rudy Giuliani, and let me tell you, the only reason you know about him doing anything is because his press office came and exaggerated his role in whatever it was that you think he did.
Love that.
And that's, you know what? That's effective
That's
politics.
a good press office.
That's a good press office. Sorry about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, you got to be a good press office.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, before we move on, that I want to say about these crowds and about these ICE protests in particular, is, you know, we started getting a lot of people reaching out about, are you safe in LA or whatever? And, like, I get it. The media was making it sound like there were riots in the streets of LA. We all remember, I remember very distinctly watching the LA riots on television as a child and being like, is all of LA dead right now?
You didn't know.
Because I was like, what is LA?
Right.
The quote unquote riots that they're trying to tell you about are just protests that the police are tear gassing and firing rubber bullets at, but they are also in a very small central part of downtown. They're not anywhere near anyone. And what you probably saw on television was that some Waymos got burned.
That's definitely what you saw.
And I just want to clear something up for everyone who's not an Angelino themselves.
Yeah.
There was no more popular action that was taken by protesters that day than burning those Waymos. I have not heard one person say one unkind word about that.
For a myriad reasons.
For a myriad reasons, it's the perfect crime. First of all, nobody owns Waymos. A tech billionaire loses...
Well, right, that's exactly right.
They're the property of... It's not like somebody lost their car that day.
Right.
So even if you are deeply worried about the sanctity of your private property, don't worry about people burning Waymos. You don't own a Waymo. Nobody owns a Waymo.
Yeah.
Waymos are owned by the oligarchy.
Yeah, of course, that's right.
So, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
They are also
Oh, sorry. No, go. Oh, I was going to say.
I was going to say, they are also causing traffic nobody needs in Los Angeles. So everyone in LA kind of secretly hates them.
Yeah. Maybe this is bombastic. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I burn down more things. I mean, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but, like, I just, like, we're at a certain point, I feel like, in America.
Yeah. Generally,
where it's like, no one is going to change anything or listen to anyone unless there is damage to rich people's property.
Yeah.
Like...
yeah, we're never going to eat the rich moment. I don't know.
So, like, I don't know why, you know, the Waymos got out of town, apparently.
Yes, thank
God. There was
God.
that photograph of them all fleeing the city. And I was like, why didn't we get more of those burned while they were here?
I know.
Burn them the fuck down.
But do not worry to yourself about the imagery, about the symbolism, about the property of burning fucking Waymos.
No, I know.
Think when you are watching a news report about protesters who are in the process of being tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets for trying to stop people from being literally disappeared by, like, government goons.
Hello.
If you are watching that news report and you see what was, I'm sure, a too long analysis of the Waymo burnings on CNN, stop and think to yourself, what am I actually concerned about in this situation?
If you want to know how stupid you sound talking about the Waymos burning, I'm going to read what Jake Tapper said on CNN because I pulled it up because when I saw this, I was like, no one has ever said anything that stupid. Well,
that's right.
It was Jake Tapper.
Right.
But he was having a conversation with this woman who was like, well, it's not like they burned that many cars. And and Jake Tapper responds, he said, still, I mean, 5 cars set on fire is still a lot of cars set on fire, even if most cars are not.
And that's the important thing to hear. Most cars were not on fire.
It's just so, like, 5 cars.
Right. In a city...
It's so many cars, even if it was just
in a city
the 5
of millions, 5 cars that no one even owns were set on fire. But, you know, 5 cars.
So that's what you sound like.
Right. I know
complaining
of more
about the Waymos burning.
Than 5 people that were critically injured by rubber bullets at that protest, including members of the press.
Right.
So
yes.
I implore you to not get hung up on sort of propagandistic news reporting from, like, major media players who have, like, a financial interest in squelching this kind of dissent and participating in Trump's antics, telling you that you should be concerned that people were burning fucking Waymos in LA. I promise you that was more supported by the citizens of LA than any single thing the protesters did, including probably saving people. Because
for sure.
I have not heard one single criticism of that action from inside of LA, but I heard it from everyone outside of LA. In any case, that's my rants.
All right, well, mine is about this subject.
I suspected.
And, you know, listen, I'm going to preface this maybe because I feel like I'm going to start down this rant and there are going to be people listening to this podcast who are going to be like, oh, Brent is yet again trying to make the Democrats and the Republicans sound the same in their level of awfulness. And that's not what I'm getting at here.
No.
And I'll get to that as I go. But just buckle up because, like, you know, don't get mad at me yet because you haven't heard me out.
That's right.
But I just really, in the face of everything that is going on in Los Angeles, I just really wish so desperately that there was, like, one of the two political parties on option that wasn't pro-ICE.
Yes.
That wasn't in a competition with the other party to overfund ICE.
That's right.
Or a party that wasn't so deeply pro-police as the Democrats have been, and obviously the Republicans are. Or pro-putting people in detention centers without due cause. Because Democrats, that was happening under...
That's right.
I mean, we've had ICE for the last 20 plus years, so it's not like it stopped for the, you know, however many years we had Democratic presidents. Right. You know, I wish we had a party that wasn't pro-building those said detention centers.
Right.
You know, Democrats have funded the building of those. Or pro-law enforcement using military equipment. Or
right.
pro-law enforcement arresting peaceful protesters, because they were doing that on college campuses under the Biden administration.
That's right.
I wish there was a party that wasn't bragging about how they're better at deporting people on the internet.
This drives me fucking nuts.
Democrats do that all the time.
All the
Donald
time.
Trump can't even deport people right.
Yeah.
It's what? What are you talking about? Or, you know, a party that didn't run an entire political campaign about how they were going to be more rotten to immigrants than Donald Trump is. Right. Because, lest we forget, Kamala's first national ad was talking about how many ICE agents she was going to hire.
Yeah.
So, like, do I think that Kamala Harris would be sending, you know, the goons to Los Angeles Home Depots? Probably not, although we should consider it.
Right. Depends on whether she got criticized about not sending the goons to Home Depot.
Exactly. But, like, it would be cool if, like, somebody, like, I just don't understand why get rid of the Gestapo is the most insane leftist opinion on earth. Like, that should be, like, every Democrat's opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't arrest peaceful protesters. Like, I don't know why we're not out. Like, we were passing laws to make it easier to do that.
Right.
In regards to, you know, the Gaza protests.
That's right.
I don't get it. Like, what has happened?
Well, I can tell you what has happened. I mean, you know what has happened.
I mean, I
do.
do.
Part of what has happened here is they decided to try to compete on turf.
Yes.
That they didn't need to be on because
Yeah.
they don't have any way of competing on the turf they should actually occupy,
Right.
because they're not allowed to promote any ideas that people actually want because they're fucking donors.
And that just gives Republicans, like, it allows them to do this, right? Like, Democrats never do the worst thing if you take it all the way to the end of the logical outcome. But, like, they take it close enough that it isn't so much of a stretch for Republicans to then do it. Like, am I shocked that this is going on with ICE? Like, obviously not. In part because, you know, Trump said that he was going to do this exact thing. But it's also, like, if we weren't so far down the road with this already, like, it would be harder for him to be pulling off.
My parents talk about this all the time in relation to the way that candidates run in upstate New York for Congress. Because they will run and be like, I'm going to be the toughest on border security. As if, first of all, they have a border up there. Fuck off. But, you know, they will run on these hard right positions being like, well, the electorate there is just really conservative. And my parents are always like, they can just vote for a Republican if they want that.
Yes.
Being mediocre at being a Republican is actually not a way to get votes up here. You have to find Democratic votes.
Yes.
And this is not what Democrats want up here. So instead, you're suggesting that being Republican light is your only way of getting elected, but you are, because of that, unable to recommend any policies that would counter some of these narratives that would allow there to be a discussion about whether we need a bunch of government goons disappearing people in the streets.
Well, and that's what's so crazy. It's like, if you're wondering why, you know, there have been Democrats who have been mad about, like, well, we don't use ICE for that, or, you know, arresting people or shooting journalists or whatever. Like, you've seen, like, a minimal amount of, you know, outcry from national Democrats. But, like, the reason that there isn't, like, some sort of, like, rethinking of this is because they think the exact same things.
Yes.
I mean, they spent all of last year, it wasn't just Harris, it was all of them, like, trying to push through that conservative immigration bill, right? And it was just because they wanted it for an electoral win, because they wanted to be able to say that they had done it, which is why Donald Trump got it shut down. We all know the story. He was like, don't vote for this because I don't want you to vote for it while Biden's the president. But, like,
but that's an insane position. He literally had to tell his own party, don't vote for this deeply conservative bill because I don't want the Democrats to get credit for it.
Yes.
They are competing to be the most conservative on an issue that I just don't think, minus the lies that Trump has been telling about who is, about crime being rampant and immigrant gangs coming and these are not things that people are actually having like personal experience with. These are things they're hearing on Fox News.
Yeah.
Minus those lies, I think most people know that immigrants are an incredibly important part of our economy. They know that they're an incredibly important part of their community. They might think that immigrants in LA are an important part of our community because they don't understand our community, but they know that the immigrants in their community are important. And you have seen that time and again when ICE has come and tried to steal one immigrant out of a random town in like Missouri, and the entire town rallies around them and gets them released. Yeah. Because it turns out that everybody is actually interacting with the issue of immigration in a way that is like fairly positive, minus some very bad players, governors at the border states who are like trying to like send undocumented people to New York, and that, there's like those kinds of things going on. Yeah. Those are political players that are creating those problems, though. And people are being lied to about why things like housing crises and jobs crises are happening. But at the very base of it, people understand that immigrants are here.
Right, I know.
I don't think that this is actually like a sort of deeply held feeling that like Americans intrinsically have about our relationship to immigration. I think they would rather that this not be the approach that we use. They just, every party's being disingenuous about it.
Ugh. And like, we're going to have a similar conversation when we get to, the war, which we're not going to talk about for very long, but I just am like, stop. Like, is there somewhere I can go?
Right?
Right? Where everyone isn't awful?
Well,
No, as it turns out.
Yes. Is there somewhere I can go where I can vote for people who aren't awful?
Well,
I think a lot of people are great.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yes.
Like, I think that, I've been seeing this I've been using this narrative. I'm taking credit for this because I thought of this. But also I've been seeing this narrative confirmed by other people who are thinking about this. Not confirmed, but also echoed by other people who are thinking about this. That one of the reasons that America is very difficult to do fascism in is because we're just so fucking chaotic. Like, we are not Germany. We do not follow rules here. We all have our own agendas. We're all very like, we all get to do what we want to do. And because of that, it's actually really hard to impose order in a place like this.
Sure.
And that is our strength right now in this moment in dealing with these people trying to impose order on us, is that it's just going to be really hard to do because we're so fucking annoying.
Yeah.
And like, I love that about us, honestly. And I feel like we are seeing in LA, I don't know why anyone would try to take on LA, by the way, with this. Have you seen how we talk to our city council here?
Oh my God. Well, it's like
they didn't watch those city council hearings. I know they didn't, because if they knew that every Angelino had gone into those city council hearings and began their remarks to the city council with, first of all, fuck you and fuck every single person here because you're all fucking hacks. Like, if they had known how we speak to our own elected officials that we theoretically elected ourselves.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about the city.
No, and it's crazy here.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. But I feel like you often hear Democrats kind of like bemoan that everyone is awful and everyone in America is terrible and we all have awful positions and we're all awful people, whatever. Americans are, by and large, very friendly people who are a little silly and value their personal choices.
Right.
And though that gets, used against us a lot by politicians who are sort of like interested in exploiting that desire for evil.
Yeah.
But I feel like we live in a place right now filled with kind of great people, and nobody is taking advantage of that or using that for good. Like, that is what frustrates me about how national Democrats and local Democrats are acting right now.
Yeah.
Is I actually think that Americans are, by and large, sort of like kind of redeemable. You know, I don't think that we're bad people. I don't think anyone is bad people, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that this is like an irredeemably evil place filled with irredeemably selfish assholes. Like, it often gets it often gets articulated on the left that is what the problem is.
Yeah.
And not even on the left, but the center. I'm going to call the center left. I don't think the left thinks that. I think the center left thinks that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's in part to protect themselves from having to do anything, because I don't think that's actually true about Americans on the right or left. I think that is true of Americans in the capitalist class who talk to billionaires too much. Totally. And that is the entire political system.
Yeah, exactly.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
In any case. Speaking of hacks, Karen Bass is fucking this up.
Surprise. I mean, she fucked up the fires.
Yeah.
Which, there was no winning the fires, obviously. But I mean,
everyone was going to fuck up the fires.
I don't think anybody's going to remember her great leadership during the fires.
No.
Nobody is going to remember her great leadership during the ICE raids.
No, they're going to remember that the LAPD was incredibly violent towards peaceful protesters,
Right.
and that was something that she okayed.
I think she's running out of time to have anybody think that she's had a great idea, and I think it is in large part because she hasn't yet had one.
That's right. And
So-
I think that puts us in a very precarious situation in the city because we don't want Rick fucking Caruso to become the mayor. I'm livid about
I don't want to
the
be
failures here.
I mean, I probably am not the first person to say it, and I'm only saying it just because I love being right about things.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Caruso is going to be the next mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah, and it's because of failures like this.
Yeah.
Where, the sort of wrong constituency was appealed to here. And there was no political leadership in a time of great crisis.
Protest peacefully. And then there's like this stupid fucking curfew downtown also, which is just sort of like...
it shouldn't have gotten to the point where they needed a curfew downtown because the police should not have been shooting people.
Hello?
Like, it shouldn't have gotten to the point... Like, obviously, they should have, been prepared for Trump to use something like this as a political pawn to try to send the military in. Yeah. But they shouldn't have validated that he was right about the people of Los Angeles by acting like they, too, needed to use violent means to break up what were by and large, by everyone, considered fairly peaceful protests that didn't have much, there was not a threat level in these protests.
Yes.
And ICE is not LAPD. And they should not get the respect of LAPD because they are kidnapping people off of LAPD streets.
I was going to say, they should
LAPD
not.
should be keeping us safe from ICE.
Right, I was going to say, they shouldn't have ever been deployed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that LAPD should have been deployed to protect us from ICE.
Well, yes.
I think that's who we needed protection from. If they care about public safety in the streets of LA...
Well, they don't.
Which they don't, obviously, I know.
That's the nature of policing.
Well, that's so true. But I mean, like, just like the whole framing of it was wrong, even from just like a public relations perspective.
I know.
And, at the national level, the DNC is kicking out David Hogg for suggesting that they primary idiots.
Right.
And
they're still on the look to figure out how to appeal to young men, though.
But they can't figure out how to appeal to young men. They don't want any ideas, though. So don't try an idea with them. If you give them an idea, they're against it. They're also
trying to figure out how to make sure that a 33-year-old, really cool guy doesn't become the mayor of New York.
That's right.
Also. More on that later.
Yeah.
But, I just, it's so funny when they're just sort of, they're spending literally tens of millions of dollars to, find ways to appeal to young men. And then, the only ones in their party, they're like, please, no.
Right. We don't want your ideas. We're looking for the ideas of an old person about how to appeal to young men.
Right.
We don't want any young person ideas.
Yeah, right.
Nothing like that.
God, it's so crazy. But Randy Weingarten left, too.
I know. She left her DNC position, which
she's had for 20 plus years.
Is a big showboater, and I'm sure that some of this was just to get a headline, and I respect it. What are you going to do?
That letter she wrote was not...
But, no, I think that...
She wrote it to Ken Martin, and she was like, I'm not into your style of leadership.
She had thrown her hat in with the David Hoggs and Malcolm Kenyattas.
Yeah.
And, and she's an old hack establishment Democrat.
Yeah.
And
that was surprising. I saw that headline over the weekend, actually, I think.
No, exactly. Whoa. No, and I think that... I hope that there is going to be some sort of more consternation inside of the DNC beyond just these people leaving.
Well, there was also that
because
leak
they should be asking themselves some questions right now.
Right. Well, there was also that recording of Ken Martin that got leaked where he was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Yes.
So everything's going great at the DNC right now, guys.
DNC is not crashing and burning at all. Do not worry about anything. Everything is going according to a very clear plan that they have had this whole time. And then also, I have some additional thoughts about how they could appeal to literally anyone.
Please.
Which is to not try to go cause World War III. Try to support the beginning of World War III.
Well, it's an interesting point you make.
Yeah. I feel like if there's one thing that Trump's election should have taught all of us, it's that voters don't want to be at war anymore. Right. They want dumb ideas from a dumb con man who is going to do, sneaky lying to them. Or not even sneaky, open lying to them.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to be at war. That was one thing. Every person who's been elected in the last 4 billion years, it has been because since the Iraq War, I said 4 billion, and I get that the Iraq War was not that long ago, but since the Iraq War, people have been very clear they don't want to go to war anymore.
Yeah.
Americans want to get out of wars. We're not in the war business right now.
That's right.
Whatever candidate promises to stop doing wars is who wins.
Yeah.
That happens every time. I hate to tell you this.
Yeah, we're still in the please, sir, can I afford my groceries?
Yes.
Game, right?
Exactly.
That's the game we're playing right now.
Exactly. So the idea that any one single Democrat at all has joined any one single Republican in trying to be supportive of us essentially starting a world war because we decided to support bombing Iran out of the blue.
Sure. I mean, I think
banana pants crazy
right.
stuff.
What I think is interesting about this, because like there's a few things. One, it's just so hilarious how like Democrats are obsessed with like process all the time. So the thing that they're like seem to be hitting most on social media right now is that like if Donald Trump wants to go to war with Iran, then it's got to go through Congress.
Right. They've tried this with every president.
They've tried this with every president, but I just think that it's hilarious that like most of the people who are like, well, you have to come to Congress to do that. It's like, well, will you vote for it once it's in front of Congress? Like, are you going to vote for World War III?
Well, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. So, like, that's the thing. If you see, like, Democrats out there being, like, real, putting their flag in the ground about, like, war powers resolutions or whatever, it's only just because they want to be the ones that get to say we're going to war.
Well, they want to be on the record as having voted for that war so that they can, I don't know, not get challenged by AIPAC, I guess. I don't it's all a game for them that's an internal political game that has no relationship to the reality that nobody wants to be at fucking war.
Right. I know. Except, did you see that Meghan McCain tweet?
No.
Meghan McCain, remember what Donald Trump said about your dad? I mean, she hates Donald Trump.
Sure.
She tweets nasty things about Donald Trump all the time. Really doesn't like him. I mean,
of course.
Donald Trump was not nice to John McCain.
That's so true.
Let's just say that. Donald Trump had tweeted something to the effect of like, can somebody tell Tucker Carlson that it's like not good if Iran gets a nuclear weapon or something like that.
Right.
And then she screenshotted it and then like subtweeted it out with all caps, inject this into my veins. I'm like, nobody is hornier for World War III than Meghan McCain right now.
Well,
her loins are ready.
Her dad managed to cheat
death
like 5 different times. So
saying bomb, bomb, bomb. Or was that him? Or was that Lindsey Graham? Or was it both? Was it a duet? Bomb, bomb, bomb. It was John McCain.
Bomb, I think it was.
Wasn't it?
It
was one of them.
It sounds like Lindsey Graham when you sing it. I don't know.
Well, it's because we're both gay.
Exactly. But here's what I don't like. I don't like being in lockstep with Tucker fucking Carlson.
No, and yes, I know. Or Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
Or Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey, I guess I maybe have not followed for a long time.
Well, here's an update. He's still terrible.
I was not familiar with his game, though. But the thing that is interesting about all of them is that, like, there's never, with war, any moral consistency with Democrats, with elected Democrats.
Yes.
I mean, if they're not in offense, they're very, very clear about being pacifists.
That's right. That's right.
But once they get there, whatever war anybody would like is great.
Hillary Clinton.
Well, she remains a warmonger in and out of office.
In and out of office.
I got you.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. No. It's an
important point that someone had to make.
I knew where you were going right when you interrupted me. So again, Democrats, I never expect any sort of like moral consistency. I didn't expect any out of any of the Republicans either.
No.
But it's interesting because I think maybe we're almost getting it.
I know.
With Marjorie Taylor Greene, and that's weird also because like I didn't think she had morals of any sort, let alone consistent ones.
Yeah.
She was free of morals.
That lady does not want to be at war.
Really doesn't want to be at war.
She is not an interventionist.
And she and Thomas Massey have more recently, and I would say that they were very, very late to the party, but have also been like speaking fairly consistently about like the death in Gaza also.
Yeah.
Thomas Massey specifically has been apparently on that one for a while.
Yeah.
And because I always sort of like assumed with Marjorie Taylor Greene, she would be like, okay, well, I don't like this war. Well, I don't like this war. But I'm also like a nutty, Christian Zionist. So like Israel should bomb the entire Middle East.
Right.
But apparently she doesn't even want that. So I was kind of surprised.
I know.
But like, don't make me be liking tweets from Marjorie Taylor Greene about World War III. That's I don't want that.
No, I don't want that. And here's how you could listen. If she doesn't want to be for a war, welcome her into the fold of not being for that specific war.
Medea Benjamin is out here,
Right.
palling around with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey.
I guess what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Here's what I would like is someone whose tweet to like that I can respect on at least a basic level.
I know.
And that's the problem that we're having.
But
is there are not enough people whose tweets I can like on a basic level, aside from the usual suspects.
It's only MAGA people. It's literally only MAGA people.
MAGA people and like probably Rashida. Like,
yes,
you know, there's like the sort of Ilhan Rashida. Sure, I trust them to not be trying to go to this war.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be in a position where I'm having to ally myself with total fucking nutbags because you guys have such a sort of like buyable sort of like moral compass that you want World War III to start.
Yeah.
I'm against literally any action that starts World War III.
Hello?
I don't even care if World War III is justified. I don't want it to start.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want anyone to die in a war.
Thank you.
That's
Marjorie.
It's a mess.
It's a real mess. It's like, where is the outspoken anti-war left?
Yeah.
And I don't mean left because, again,
no, you don't
we're
mean
having
left,
the same problem. I mean Democrats.
You mean
what I mean.
center left. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
I mean elected Democrats.
And that, by the way, was a huge coalition when we were younger.
Yeah.
That included much of the center left. Not enough of it. Obviously not the Hillary Clintons of the world. But, I mean, like, that was a big movement when we were sort of, like, coming up.
Yeah.
And it... I think, you know, that was the beginning of the end for the Democratic Party, I would say, because that was that was when everyone decided that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and that they were just going to be bought off by, like, outright lies by the Bush administration. You know, that was when this all began. But, like, I don't understand how we've learned nothing from that. Because Hillary Clinton literally lost a presidential election over being in favor of going to war with Iraq.
Yes.
People have rewritten the history of that to make it be about a million other things, and everyone forgets.
I try to remind people of that
the reason that was not a successful campaign in 2008, the reason that Barack Obama, an actual nobody at the time...
That was her war vote.
It was her war vote.
Yes.
It was because he wasn't in Congress yet.
It was all they... Revisit a debate.
War. Yes.
It was them 2 hours arguing about
the Iraq
war vote.
Barack Obama exists as a politician because Hillary Clinton stupidly voted for a fake war.
Yes.
And listen, great work to all of us. But like...
And he wasn't there. Lucky for him, because he would have voted for it too.
The reason that he was able to even use that was because he wasn't in office yet.
Right.
And then we decided to go back and find older people again.
Right. And then we elected him, and then he,
And somehow we never
sent thousands of drones to kill innocent people in the Middle East.
The beauty of being a younger person is that you don't have to apologize for old war votes. And instead, after him, we went with Joe fucking Biden.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we have no party right now.
I know.
Because we're still in the era of people, we're still being run by people who think the Iraq war vote was a respectable choice.
Right.
And we learned nothing from that. And now Brent and I are having to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene having moral consistency. I don't want to hear about that. Anyway, let's talk about the mayor's race in New York.
Yeah.
It's gotten exciting.
Oh, yeah.
It's not gotten exciting in only good ways, because Cuomo is still out here being a pest. It got exciting today because... Sex pest, right, the sex pest. A pest in a lot of different ways, to be fair. Yeah.
But like famously...
Famous sex pest.
Yeah.
Brad Lander, one of the leading candidates, who has cross-endorsed Mamdani, who is the kind of leading insurgent candidate, we'll say, just got arrested trying to escort someone to an immigration hearing.
Well, he attacked the ICE agents.
Well, yes. And you can see it clearly in the video where they attack him and then later someone blames him.
Right.
So it's a clear video account of somebody lying about what Brad Lander did.
Right, exactly.
On video. In any case, but the exciting news is that Mamdani is in some boroughs polling neck and neck. In some, Cuomo has the name recognition, the money, the establishment figures behind him. But it's a ranked choice race.
Yeah.
And so we actually don't know how that's going to shake out. It's really hard to pull that. And now that he's, started to kind of cross-endorse with some of the other candidates, the anti-Cuomo candidates.
Yeah. There's also a big sort of don't rank Cuomo campaign going on there.
There's a campaign to not even rank him in the first place.
Even if they haven't all cross-endorsed each other yet, although I think somebody else cross-endorsed with
Mamdani
yesterday.
Oh, maybe.
And
I mean,
I can't remember who it is.
There's been cross-endorsing with Cuomo, which I don't like.
Sure,
because I think Adrian Adams may have cross-endorsed with Cuomo. Jessica Ramos dropped out and endorsed Cuomo. I don't know what that was about because that was a weird choice. But in any case, it's going to be an exciting race to watch. And early voting just started.
Yeah, it's happening. Yeah.
So, just keep an eye on it. We didn't really have any report to tell you because nothing's happened yet. But keep an eye on it.
I love that guy, though.
Vote for Mamdani.
Like,
first of all, he's a fellow science school alum. So he went to Bronx Science.
Nice.
He's in his 30s.
Okay.
He's cooler than
33.
Cuomo.
Much.
He has good branding. And
for sure.
I think most importantly, he has some really interesting ideas about like policies that no one has ever suggested at this level about how to make New York a more livable place. He's talking about things like free buses and things that are outside of the scope of what an Adams administration conversation can even look like.
Yeah.
And that is so exciting because New York City should be a nice place to live.
Yeah.
And currently it's kind of a mess over there right now.
Yeah, he's so great. I mean, like, there's a lot of, people who, he's a good carrier of that message. And I also, like, just more broadly, even, like, in that, I saw clips of that speech that he had the other night that had, like, 5,000 or 6,000 people at it, or like that big rally, and AOC was at it, where he was just sort of like, the days of moral victories are done. I think that, like, he's really, like, he speaks really well.
Yeah.
We're always looking for somebody who can sound like Obama if they want to.
Exactly.
He can do that.
He did that amazing ad in Spanish where he doesn't even speak Spanish, but the ad was so well done that native Spanish speakers were like, oh, wow, he's speaking really fast and he sounds really good.
I think he's really great. And I hope also, I believe that Cuomo has already said that he's going to run as an independent.
Yes.
Right?
Well, the thing about the New York City mayor's race and any New York City race is that there's 1,000 lines available to run.
Yeah.
So everyone just runs anyway.
Well, and that's my hope is that, because Adams is going to run also.
Yeah.
So I hope that he also, I feel like anytime, it's so ridiculous, anytime there's like some sort of like campaign and like, there's always like, with Sanders, when he was running for president, there was sort of like this like big sort of like concern that he might run as an independent, or he might run as a green, or he might run as a, and then he would be a spoiler. There's always like these thoughts of spoilers and everything. And like, I just feel like Cuomo being like, well, I'm going to run as an independent anyway, is sort of like enough for him that I hope he runs, like working families would give them his
Mamdani,
their line, Mamdani. Yeah, like,
I hope he runs anyway too.
I hope he runs anyway too, because like, and I'm sure there will be people who will like crow about it and be like, oh, well, you lost the primaries. So like, why would you? Fuck off.
Yeah. No, Cuomo was going to do it.
Yeah.
And also, is the
and Adams is doing
going
it?
to be
like,
Curtis
he's the incumbent, I guess.
Silva? The Republican candidate is deeply unserious.
Is that right?
Yeah. He owns a lot of cats, and he wears a beret.
Oh, it's that guy. Yeah. It's the cat guy.
It's the cat guy. I saw him at the Labor Day parade last year.
Okay.
And he was looking as silly as ever.
True.
But yeah, so it's like, let's not get on our high horse about, who's a spoiler in what race.
So stupid.
Yeah. But in any case, if you're in New York, first of all, rank Mamdani first. Second of all, my mom came up with some, I think, interesting criteria for how to rank everyone else, but also then she violated it because she put Brad Lander back on her list because of the cross. And she saw him at a forum and she liked him. And I kind of like Brad Lander, so it's fine. But her initial criteria was she was only voting for New York City kids who might have ridden the subway by themselves when they were younger. And that, by the way, disqualifies Andrew Cuomo. So get him right off your list and don't rank him at all.
Well, he looks uncomfortable riding it as an adult. Have you seen those pictures of him like on the subway?
Well,
where he's like,
has, aside from being born in Queens, has never really lived in New York and doesn't know anything about it. This is a carpetbagging extraordinaire situation.
Yeah.
So tell that guy to go fucking home.
Yes.
And then this is not news, but our final thoughts are some inspiration for all of you about how to conduct yourselves in the coming months, days. We don't know how long the podcast, or when our next podcast will be, but how to conduct yourself until we come to you next. Mm-hmm. One is, don't worry anymore about Trump lying about his positions. Get rid of your moral outrage about that. He is 100% a liar. Don't worry about being shocked about it anymore. Just know that anything he said could be a lie. And move forward with that understanding without having to feel any stress in your heart about that. If Donald Trump has done something hypocritical or lied or said he was only going to arrest, undocumented criminals and then redefined what criminal meant to mean that being undocumented is criminal and therefore it's like, don't be mad that people in your community are being targeted unfairly. Do not worry about what Donald Trump is saying or thinking or doing. Free yourself of that responsibility. Don't worry about the moral outrage of all that. Just free yourself of that. And instead, this is an idea that my mom has been promoting at her local, No Kings protest, but also has been promoting among her friends in New York recently, which is that every time that you sort of like go to complain about something that the administration is doing, which you probably do 100 times a day, make sure you add what should happen instead, so that people remember that you're allowed to have ideas during fascism.
Oh,
so
I like that.
Instead of being like, oh, it's so sad, they're cutting Medicaid for a zillion people and all these people are going to die. Certainly be sad about that. But make sure your next sentence is, when they could have just provided Medicare for all, a more efficient system where we could all have healthcare. Remember, and so I don't mean like, don't be like, what they could have done instead was not do this thing.
Yes,
have a proactive idea that counters every horrible thing they're doing, so that when you talk about it with other people, you're giving them ideas to hope for instead of just bad news.
Yes.
Because part of what becomes exhausting...
This is why I'm back on my abolish ICE bullshit.
Exactly. Part of what becomes exhausting about this kind of a moment is everyone is constantly giving you bad news, and it's like, all we're supposed to do is just be mad about the bad news. And it's like, okay, well then what? Like, having a vision is also important. And Democrats are not providing a vision for what we could have. No. So that has to come from the ground up.
Yeah, we got to inception them.
So instead of, when you talk to your local electeds, when you can say, I am against X, Y, and Z happening, but make sure to give them an idea too.
Yeah.
Make sure to say, when we could have this instead.
Right.
When we could have done this other thing.
Right.
It's
all this could have been avoided if
we had done X, Y, and Z. And think of, dream big, Don't try to be reasonable.
Yeah.
You don't need to be reasonable. You don't owe that to them. Think like a Republican. They come in with the most ridiculous ideas and they're making them happen.
Yep.
Dream that big. I've always been a little inspired by them for that reason. I've said that many times on this podcast, but take that inspiration to heart. And get into the practice of doing that, because I think it will help you remember that all of human society is made up, and it's just people's random ideas. So you can have those too,
Wise words.
I'm wise. I can't help that. In any case, we'll be back with, more wisdom for you or...
See you in 6 weeks,
rants.
guys.
Hopefully before 6 weeks,
hopefully.
But you never know what we're going to do.
No.
We'll see you soon. Bye.